Good morning. This is Karen Jacobson with the NEMSIS Technical Assistance Center. Today is Thursday, August 18th. Today we are hosting our public training session and would like to present some information to you regarding the annual research data set we make available. Clay Mann, the principal investigator for the NEMSIS project, will be our presenter today. And so I am going to turn control over to you now, Clay.
Great. It's a pleasure to present today. Really, the purpose of the call and what's incredibly exciting is that we have just now closed our 2015 data set and are excited to share with you the data that we have to share with you. Okay. Okay. All right. So we continue to grow with every data set that we collect on an annual basis. So just in quick summary, so what we do, of course, is all of the great agencies across this country perform such great care. They complete patient care records. They're sent to states. The states aggregate the data to us, and then we, once a year, pull together all of those EMS activations that we've received from states, and we aggregate it into an annual public release data set that we make available to researchers. This has been an incredibly productive research data set, and that is some of the information I hope to be able to share today that I think will be incredibly helpful. Hopefully you'll be able to share this with researchers in your states or folks you work with, and my hope here is to demonstrate the value of the data set and also I demonstrate how easy it is to access it. So that's really my purposes for our meeting today. So I'm going to go ahead and begin to talk about the results of our aggregation for 2015. So here I'm just going to drag over a set of tables that will represent an article that will be submitted to PEC, Pre-Hospital Emergency Care Journal, and published probably in January, that just provides a summary of the 2015 data. But here you can see on this last row here in 2015 just how incredibly successful we've been this year. We've collected data from 49 states and territories that represent data from 10,137 agencies in those 49 states for a total number of records of 30,206,450. So just an incredible accomplishment. And you can take a look at our growth over the years, right? So from 2009, beginning with 5.7 million, and now up to 30.2. That's just incredible growth. I'll mention these data sets, of course, are available. So we not only make the current data set available, the 2015, but we have data going back to 2009. We traditionally try to talk our researchers into, if they want to do some type of a time series analysis, that they begin with 2010, just because 2009 was a much smaller data set with not lots of coverage from each of the 26 states. So that's usually what we do in regards to that. So great news, just incredible work from our local EMS agencies, all the work that happens at the state level, and now to be able to aggregate this into a national database is just incredible. I wanted to give some perspective in regards to what that really means. So what I'm going to do here just real quickly is I opened up the web page to the HCUP site. These are the folks that maintain many of the other national federal data sets that are available to researchers. Here's probably the largest that exists other than NEMSIS. It's the inpatient sample. So this is a sample of hospital discharges from across the country. And if you see in that first paragraph there, so what they do to provide the data for researchers to look at hospitalizations is they basically collect 7 million hospital stays and then they weight those hospitals, those 7 million, to represent 30 million. So instead of trying to capture the entire population, they collect 7 million and then they weight that 7 million so that each of those records represent 5 hospitalizations. And so if 7 million times 5 is 35 million. So even though HCUP to collect the NIS sample, the National Inpatient Sample, receives 5 times the funding that NEMSIS does to do their sample, it still isn't near as valuable as a NEMSIS data set. So you can imagine using a weighted sample to represent all folks. You really can only do analyses that relate to whatever those 7 million folks were weighted to represent. So if they have been weighted to represent acuity, race, age, then you can use those variables to estimate national data. But clearly, if those 7 million haven't been weighted on an area that you're interested in, then there's no way for you to use the data set. So just to compare our collection of 30 million compared to the 7 million, the next largest federal data set, I just hope that brings some perspective to mind. So that's just incredible. So let me just show you real quickly the composition of the current data set. So this is how the 30.2 million breakdown by state. So here's the 49 states and territories who submitted data. We welcome the District of Columbia to this data collection, which is our most recent data collection. Karin works really hard with these states to ensure that we have consistent numbers across the states. And as you look across any of the states, you can see that their submissions are fairly consistent across the quarters of 2014. So this is
sometimes I hit 7, it would register as 2.7.
So this is the data. If I could ask people to mute their phones, that could be incredibly helpful. All right, so that's just a brief overview of the composition of the data set. Let me also maybe walk through these tables a little bit just to give you a flavor for the data. So the data, we're still actually finishing the process of cleaning the data. So I just added on 2015 as this additional row for table 1. But all of the tables below here are based on the 2014 data, simply because we're not even ready to populate these tables with the latest data. But will clearly give you a flavor for the composition of the data set, because these overall percentages don't change much from year to year. So just a brief run through real quickly. So here's a level of service. So they are primarily paramedics across the country. Non-volunteer, 76% of the EMS agencies are non-volunteer. There's their percentage for mixed and volunteer. What type of EMS agencies are there? What's their organizational structure? You can see there real quickly. Here's a brief figure that shows the daily count of EMS events for 2014 by for the entire year. And this is a really interesting pattern that we see for every year. Although 2014 had this really incredibly dip in March and April, and we're not sure what that was. Usually it doesn't dip so far, but we do clearly see EMS activations are high in January and February. There is kind of a lull as we move into spring, and then summer gets really big. Then there's kind of a lull through fall, and then it begins to kind of pick up again as we start the new year. Also, interestingly, here you can see that there are almost consistently more calls on during a weekday than a weekend. So here's the weekend values are primarily lower than you see for the weekdays, and we see that across all of the years. So really good information. Age breakdown. I'm always surprised by the number of centennials that we have in the data set. as that continues to grow. Excuse me. Here are the complaints reported by dispatch. You can see what are the large ones: breathing problems, fall victims, a person indicated as sick, traumatic injuries is large, and we still have a number that are not applicable. These are calls where a complaint isn't reported by dispatch. So here's a distribution of primary impressions. So lots of abdominal pain. You'll see down here that also traumatic injury is high here. Primary symptom, lots of pain. Cardiac events, what is a presumed etiology? So if you just look at the total number of cardiac events, how do they break down in regards to etiology, insurance? I'll move through these somewhat quickly. So here's the distribution. Those where there was a traumatic injury, what was the cause of that injury, and maybe this shows the value of the data set. For example, lightning strikes. So clearly, I think the largest study of lightning strikes that are currently published has a sample size of 10, and here we collect about over 200 per year. So clearly, the fact that this is a nationwide total population of EMS activations and responses makes it an incredibly valuable data set. So that's kind of a quick picture of the composition of the data set. I wanted to show you just a couple of quick snapshots I took this morning of the quality of the data. So let's talk about the quality. We hear quite often here at the TAC, well, I'm sure my agency isn't collecting very good data under version 2, and I'm sure the data really isn't good quality. Let me show you. So I just basically ran a query this morning using one of the NEMSIS dashboards and pulled up all of the 2015 data. We, of course, at the NEMSIS TAC can't look at whether or not a cardiac arrest has been classified as a fall or something like that, because we don't have an idea of the scenario that EMS comes across. But there are a number of things we can look for, kind of internal consistency. So this first classification of measures of data quality we call completeness. So these are elements where there really is no possibility of a unknown. Well, there can at times be an unknown value, I guess, but not values or data shouldn't be missing. So for example, mass casualty event, the variable is, was this a mass casualty event? Yes or no. And so we're able to look at how often these kind of inclusive elements like gender, you're male or female, if there was a mass casualty, how many patients were at the scene? It's either single or many. So very cut and dried elements. And so here we can look at the quality of that data. So so we do have some areas that we could improve, but clearly, most of the elements are in the 90s or in the high 80s. So pretty good data quality when you're talking about 30.2 million records. Another area we can look at is consistency. So if as an EMS provider you did indicate that this patient had suffered a cardiac arrest, did you report the etiology of the arrest? Did you report whether or not resuscitation was attempted? And then if you reported an age, did you report the age units? So age is just a number, and then the units is this, does this represent years, months, days? And so here we can look at kind of internal consistency, and you can see the numbers that we have for the version 2 data set. And then valid times, we can look at valid times. So how often are we able to calculate an elapsed time? So the response time, the scene time, and the transport time. Take two two time elements and subtract them from each other to come up with an elapsed time. So you can see how often across the 30.2 million records we're able to accomplish that. So we keep track of the data quality. We also keep track of the actual kind of a data quality score for over the 10,000 EMS agencies that have submitted data. So there's 10,000 little dots represented on this chart, and this is percent of complete for each agency based on these elements. And so you can see kind of where we are as an entire nation. And though it's kind of hard to see the density of dots representing agencies gets much thinner here than it is on top. So we do have a ways to go. We have agencies to work with. That will always be the case, but we actually have a pretty nice weak slope here at the top that shows that there's a lot of folks that are doing a very very good job. And maybe related to that, so just as a sneak peek, because no one else has seen this, we have talked about how we anticipate that data quality will improve with version 3. So I'm going to give you guys the first look at a new dashboard that hasn't even been released yet that we'll be probably talking about next month when it's released. But this is a V3 version 3 data quality report that's going to be coming out that literally will be a public dashboard. Anybody can look at it, and it will update to the latest week, the past latest week, every week. So you'd be able to go in at any time and look and see at the quality of the version 3 data submitted last week to us. As you can see, this isn't last week. We're still working on this. Kevin White has been very instrumental in developing this, and this is actually in the Tableau development site. It's not yet public, but clearly we can move kind of down here, and you can see how the quality of the data under version 3, in my opinion, is even better than under version 2. So how often do we have complete patient information? In regards to cardiac arrest, so very similar to what you saw under version 2, if there is a cardiac arrest, how often do we have etiology? Was the arrest witnessed? All these elements associated with the Utstein criteria for cardiac arrest, how often are those collected? How often do we have valid times? If there was an injury, how often is cause of injury reported? You can walk down through this, and I have a really good feel that I think the data associated with version 3 is going to be even cleaner than we're seeing under version 2. So I truly believe that the data is actually a lot cleaner than I think people give the data credit for. So a little glimpse at both version 2 and version 3 data quality. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, the next thing I want to just walk through, I've just got two more things to cover, so this will probably just be a half-hour presentation and would welcome your comments. I wanted to just make sure that folks understood how they can access the data set. So we will be completing the 2015 data set, and we'll probably have it out for public consumption within, I imagine, within a week and within 2 weeks for sure. We're very close. So here is where you would request the annual data set on the website. If you click there, it will take you to this page where you complete a request form here, and then you send that to me or Karin, and it's reviewed to ensure that whatever you're proposing to study, that it meets with the available data, and that we're sure that the confidentiality of the data will be maintained. There is a user manual that's always available for you to pull up, or for researchers to pull up, that walks through every variable that's available, its definition, its structure. Is it an element that can occur more than once? So like a procedure, you can have many procedures per patient. It describes all of that work. The data set is large. Of course, this is now going to say 30.2 million instead of 25.8, the last year's data set. So it's an incredibly large data set. We we don't just build a flat file that has columns as elements and rows as EMS activations. Very few programs would be able to even handle that. So there are relational data set or relational tables in the data that we send to you, which means that the data are in separate tables, but in each table there's a primary key, so you can link all of the tables together. And Ming Tao, who is the senior statistician for NEMSIS, he prepares those relational tables, and here he's provided some just programming that you can use in SAS to actually combine the data. Once you have the relational tables, you can combine it. It shows you how to look at frequencies, and so these kind of programming files can be very helpful to getting you started. We provide the data in forms compatible with two statistical packages, SAS and Stata. Both SAS and Stata can convert the data into other common statistical packages, SPSS, BMBT, R. All those can be converted from those two formats. And then the data is also available in ASCII, so just a common programming language if folks would wish to move the data into some other format. And then I'll just mention Ming Tao is very amenable to the idea that if you have an idea, you're not quite sure how to use the data to approach your idea, how to set up, he is more than available by phone or by email to help you set up the data set in a way that would be meaningful and allows you to answer your question of interest. So if, for example, you're interested in lightning strikes, as we demonstrate in the frequency for cause of injury, we're more than happy to perhaps just cut those 211 EMS activations for you, and so you have a much smaller data set to work for that works very well in Excel or something of that nature. So we're amenable to helping you in any way we can be able to utilize the data, and both he and I are available just by email to address those questions. So just finally, I wanted to give you just a quick example of how productive we have been in regards to this data set. So we're now publishing slightly over in the peer-reviewed literature. We're publishing slightly over one peer-reviewed article per month is showing up in the peer-reviewed literature. So these are journals that have an impact factor. That is, their research journals. This isn't like a magazine publication. All of these are publications in scientific journals, and we're well over 50. I think this list was updated in May, and we probably have 5 to 6 additional publications that I need to add. But we're publishing in Pre-Hospital Emergency Care, Annals of Emergency Medicine, American Journal of Emergency Medicine, Pediatric Emergency Care, so many very influential journals. And maybe just for fun, let's see if I can, maybe I would just show you an example of a recent publication that has come out. So this just came out very recently. These are Cornell researchers, and Erin led this analysis. She used NEMSIS data to determine what is the kind of racial and social composition of people who contact 911 for emergencies that actually receive bystander support. So what do the folks look like who actually have a very kind person recognize that they are facing an emergency and are willing to step up and render some bystander support. So really kind of an interesting study using the NEMSIS data. So I'll just go to a figure she has here. So she looked at differences by socioeconomic status. So in the zip code where this incident occurred, she's looking at kind of economic disadvantage of the the geographic area, and then she's looking at whether or not the patient was white or black, and whether the incident occurred in an area that was densely populated, or not very densely populated, so more kind of rural areas. And so some interesting findings on the y-axis is the likelihood that you would receive bystander support. So what we see immediately is that a white patient is more likely to receive bystander support than a black patient. Interestingly, for both racial groups, if you're in a rural area, you are more likely to receive bystander support. So maybe that's a surprise or not a surprise. And highly densely populated areas is the next highest, and then just slightly below is the mid density area. So kind of interesting there. These are based on kind of a regression model and what's called eigenvalues. And so if you want to look at whether or not people are more likely to help a patient based on the socioeconomic status of the counties where these people are suffering these emergencies. Right here, 0 is kind of there are no socioeconomic disadvantages. And if you trail off in that eigenvalue, if you trail off either in a positive direction or in a negative direction, the counties become more socioeconomic disadvantaged. And so you can see that, the prevalence of receiving bystander care goes down as you move into counties or into regions or areas or zip codes where the area is considered to be disadvantaged. So interesting findings that are only made possible using the NEMSIS data. And of course, the value of this is that none of this data needs to be weighted, because we have a great representation of everything that occurs in the country. So clearly, we would have never weighted the NEMSIS data based on bystander attributes. And so the fact that we have the total population allows us to answer incredibly important questions like this one. So I am going to stop there. I've been talking for way too long. I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions related to the current data set that will be out in a couple of weeks, or to any of the past data sets that we've made available to investigators. Okay, no questions. One thing I just might add that came to my mind is there are some limitations associated with the data, as you might anticipate. One of the most important ones is you speak to investigators about the data set. Most people immediately think of the NEMSIS National Registry as a registry of patients receiving care, and that's what most other federal registries are. In fact, ours is not. Ours is a registry of EMS activations. And so if in a two-tier system across the country, if you call 911 and a first responder shows up to your house and renders care, and then a ambulance or transporting unit comes somewhat later and transports you to the hospital, the NEMSIS National Registry would include a patient care report for both of those resources that came to your aid. So it truly is a registry of activations rather of patients. But that doesn't end up to be a limitation if you spend some time thinking about it. So say if you were interested in looking at the number of medications given to patients or the frequency of procedures done, you would never be able to do that with the HCUP data, with the inpatient sample, because it's based on patients. It doesn't give every application of a medication in that data set. Where ours, if you have two different resources respond to you in an emergency and both offer medications, maybe both offer even the same medication to you at different times, all of that information is in NEMSIS, because we collect every single EMS resource that would care for you during an emergency event. So there are real advantages to that so-called limitation associated with the data. That's probably the most prevalent. Any other questions come to mind? that we can answer before we end the webinar?
Clay, this is Karen.
Uh-huh.
So if someone is interested in more than one calendar year research data set, can they request it?
Yeah, great question. So when you complete your request form, if you would just indicate that on the form, how we usually handle that. So we receive requests for the data probably once a week on average, and some of the requests are coming from very ambitious folks who maybe have limited experience working in large data sets. So someone may ask for all 6 years, 2010 through 2015. And the way we handle that is we tell them that we'll send you 1 year of data. We'll send you the most current year of data. Just figure out how to use it, kind of get used to using relational tables, get the data set up, become familiar with kind of running frequencies. Once you've got that 1 year of data up, just send me an email indicating that you're ready, that you've got it up, you've figured it out, you know how to use it, and then we would send the additional 5 years of data, for example. So that's kind of how we handle the situation where people ask for multiple years of data, just to ensure that we're not putting just loads of data out there that people won't end up using, just as kind of as a confidentiality kind of security measure.
Hey, Clay.
Yes.
It's Kathy. I have a question for you.
Hi,
I
Kathy.
can go in the data that we saw earlier that you had done with the percentages. Like I might be able. What I would like to do is take Pennsylvania and get that data and kind of see if our percentages are close to the same, which I think it's going to be.
Oh yeah.
Where do you have this information somewhere that I can like look at so I know what fields I need to use and like my to get the information I'm looking for? All I need is what you have here that you have just brought up. Is that somewhere out there that I can see it?
You bet. I'd be happy to send this to you, and then these tables will be published in pre-hospital emergency care probably in January of 2017. It just takes that long for a publication to be published. But yeah, I can make this available to you today.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And then you can do those comparisons. And then if anybody down the road wants to compare it to what's actually published, these will be published. So that would work out very good. Yeah, happy to send this to you, Kathy. Yeah.
Okay. Do you need my? I'll send you an email.
I have it.
I think you
I'll
do.
Get it. I'll get it to him, Kathy.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. Any other questions regarding the NEMSIS public release research data set? All right, great. Well, before I turn it back over to Karen, I'll just once again reiterate that this is such an incredible resource, and kudos to the folks on this call that makes this happen for each of their states. I mean, this is just, I continue to be amazed at just how we've been able to make this come together in this country. It's just incredibly valuable, and we are so willing to make this data available. So if you come across anybody in your state or you yourself interested in utilizing the data in any way, we will do whatever it takes to facilitate you being able to meet that need. So please feel free to contact us, and I'll turn it back over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Clay. All right. Well, we want to thank everyone for joining us. As Clay mentioned, all you have to do on the NEMSIS website is hover over reporting tools. The third item down is request NEMSIS data. The request form for the annual research data set is here. You can fill that out, send that to Clay now saying we'd like the 2015 data set when it's ready, and roughly, wouldn't you say, Clay and Mancal, it'll be about 2 weeks in which we could get that mailed out to folks. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us. and we can put you into contact with Meng Tao directly, or if you have some clinical questions, either Clay or I are available to assist with any questions. All right.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate folks joining us, and those of you who didn't have the ability to enter your names, if you have questions, please just reach out to us so we know who you are and that you joined us on the call today. All right. Well, take care, everyone. Happy remainder of August.
Thank you very much.
Later. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.